I've been running an AI agent on this little board for the past few weeks. Not a Raspberry Pi, an Arduino Uno Q. It's got 4GB of RAM, a Qualcomm AI chip, costs about €53. And the agent running on it, it remembers everything. It learns from every session and it builds its own skills as it goes. If you've watched my OpenClaw video, you'll know I'm deep into self-hosted AI agents. This is the next step, and honestly it's better in almost every way that matters. Makers. Today we're going to talk about why I've moved from OpenClaw onto a tool called Hermes Agent and why I've chosen the Arduino Uno Q as the machine that it lives on. If you're watching this, you probably know what an AI agent is. You probably tried something like OpenClaw, or you're probably watching this space. You know how these things work: a large language model with tool access, running tasks autonomously on your behalf. What I want to cover today is a specific setup that I use, which is genuinely better for makers and hobbyists, cheaper to run, more secure, more capable over time, and accessible from anywhere. Let's get into it. Hermes Agent is an open source AI agent framework from Noose Research. Think of it as being the same category as OpenClaw or Claude Code, an autonomous agent that can run terminal commands, read and write files, browse the web, write code, and do all that in a loop until the task is done. But there are a few things that make Hermes Agent genuinely different, and that's what I want to talk about. And I want to walk through the ones that actually matter in day-to-day use, because on paper a lot of agents look like they do the same thing. The first one is skills. Hermes builds a library of reusable procedures as it works. When it solves a complex problem, setting up a server, debugging a tricky piece of code, figuring out a workflow, it saves all that as a skill document. And next time you need to do something similar, it loads that skill so it doesn't have to rediscover everything from scratch. And here's the part I found really compelling: it tags those skills with where they came from. Skills it creates itself are marked with its own provenance, so you always know which skills were hand-authored versus which ones were built from experience. The second thing is memory. Hermes has persistent memory across sessions. It remembers who you are, your preferences, your environmental setup, your conventions. It's not starting from zero every time you open up a new terminal. That context compounds. The more you use it, the more useful it becomes. And the third provider is flexibility. Hermes works across basically all large language model providers. Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, DeepSeek, local models, OpenRouter. You're not locked into one model or one pricing structure. You can swap them mid-workflow. So why did I move away from OpenClaw? Because I've covered OpenClaw in previous videos in depth, I wanted to be more honest about what I found living with it for a while. OpenClaw is genuinely impressive. The multi-agent architecture, the way it handles long-running tasks, it's well thought through. But there are two things that started to bother me. The first one is cost. I think I did mention this one on the video. OpenClaw has a huge system prompt. We're talking tens of thousands of tokens just to start a session. Every heartbeat, every background check, every small task, all of that burns through tokens at a rate that adds up fast. I showed in my previous video the default setup running all Opus models. Comes out around £430 a month. Even with optimization, routing heartbeats to cheaper models, being selective, you're still looking at a significant ongoing cost. Hermes uses Anthropic's prompt caching to reduce costs on multi-turn conversations. The system prompt is cached at a stable breakpoint at provider level, so you don't pay full input token rates on every turn. Subsequent turns within the cache TTL, time to live, 1 hour by default, are pulled from the cache at a discounted rate. For persistent agents running all day, this compounds meaningfully, especially across sessions. The second thing is the security model. OpenClaw has a concept called Claw Hub, where its skills and integrations come from. The issue is that when you're pulling skills from a shared registry, if you're not careful about which you install, you're trusting third-party code to run with agent-level access across your machine. OpenClaw's documentation flags this. Running agents is risky, so it makes sense to harden your setup. With Hermes, the skills your agent builds come from its own sessions. They're generated from what you've actually done in the actual environment. You can review them, edit them, pin the ones you want to keep. There's no external registry pulling in code that you didn't write. For a device sitting on our home network, that really matters. Right, the hardware. Why is Hermes running on this instead of a Raspberry Pi? So the Arduino Uno Q4 4GB version costs about $53. The 2GB version is about $39. So compared with a Raspberry Pi 5 with 4GB, you're looking around £60–70 by the time you've provided a case, power supply, and SD card. The Uno Q comes with 32GB of EMC storage built in, so you don't need an SD card. It's actually more reliable and more faster built in. Under the hood, you've got the Qualcomm Dragonwing QRB2210 processor. That's on the NPU side, the Linux system, and it's also got the STM32 microcontroller built in as well, so it's two computers on one board. The Linux side runs Python, which runs Hermes, and connects to the network. The The microcontroller handles sensors, motors, real-time stuff. That split is genuinely useful for robotics projects. In benchmarks, the Sysbench single-threaded scores, the Uno Q sits around 40,000. A Raspberry Pi 4 is about 68,000, Raspberry Pi 5 and 500 series around 105,000. So the Pi is definitely much faster in raw compute, but running an agent like this is mostly waiting for API calls and doing file operations. A raw CPU isn't the bottleneck. The only caveat there I would say is if you're running lots of playwright tests, for example. The Uno Q's price point, the built-in storage and the onboard AI acceleration make this a compelling choice for this specific use case. The deeper reason I thought I chose it, and one that really drives the whole architecture, is this. I run my sessions on a lot of different machines. My laptop, my desktop, Pi here, Pi there, Pi everywhere. I start a new session on a different machine and the learning from the previous one is gone. It doesn't transfer. Having one Hermes instance that lives permanently on a dedicated board, that's always on, always accessible, always accumulating that context, that's a fundamental better design. One agent running sub-agents when it needs, compounding everything it learns into one place. The obvious alternative to a dedicated single board computer is a virtual private server, a VPS. Renting a small cloud machine, install Hermes on it, and you're done. And for some people that makes sense, but let's look at what it actually costs. A decent entry-level VPS with 2 cores, 2 gigs of RAM runs around £5 to £8 per month, depending on the provider. Hertz is cheap, DigitalOcean a bit more. It's about £60 to £90 a year, every year, indefinitely. The Uno Q 4GB costs around €53, that's a one-time purchase, no subscription. You could pay once and run it for years. And unlike a VPS, if you ever stop using it as an agent host, it's still a capable single-board computer. It goes into your next project. A robot, a sensor node, home automation controller. It's not a sunk cost, it's hardware. A Pi 5 tells the same kind of story, around £60 to £70 all in, break even in 8 to 12 months versus a VPS. And again, at the end of its life as an agent host, it's a Pi. You can still find use for it. The VPS argument is basically, I'm paying for the convenience that I never have to think about hardware. That's a fair argument. But if you're a maker and you've got a Pi or an Arduino sitting in a drawer right now, the economics are even clearer. Self-hosted wins over on cost, and you get a physical asset at the end of it. This brings me to Tailscale, because a dedicated always-on agent is only useful if you can actually reach it wherever you are. Tailscale is a free VPN service built on WireGuard. You install it on the Uno Q, or wherever you want the device to connect from, your laptop, your phone, anything, tablet, and they become part of your own private network. No port forwarding, no firewall rules, no exposing anything to the public internet. Your devices get a stable private IP from the Tailscale network. The Uno Q might be, for example, 100.64.0.1. Your laptop might be 100.64.0.2. You SSH into the Uno Q from anywhere in the world, as if they're sitting right next to each other on the same desk. It's free for personal use up to 100 devices. There's nothing to self-host. Tailscale handles the coordination server. The actual traffic goes peer-to-peer, so it's fast and doesn't route through any other servers. For a home lab setup, it's generally one of the best tools out there. Right, let's actually get to the setup. I'll walk through how I got Hermes running on the Uno Q from a clean board. I've just loaded up Arduino App Lab, and this is so I can see the IP address of the thing I've got connected over USB. So if I just connect into there, and I click down here, I should get a terminal shell. Okay, so this is now the Arduino Uno Q. So the first thing we need to do is install Tailscale. This is simply one command. So we type in curl and pipe sh, type in the magic password. Okay, so now we just need to bring up Tailscale. So we do sudo tailscale up. And then it says to authenticate, I just need to authenticate this. So I'm going to copy that. Let's load up a browser. Log me into my Tailscale account, connect the device, and it's connected successfully. So if we go now back to the terminal, you can now see that it says success. That's it for Tailscale. So from here, I just SSH into it from my laptop or from the rest of my setup. Much more comfortable than typing on the board itself, and it's accessible from anywhere. Installing Hermes is also a single command. Let's do that next. Curl again. Quick typo, here we go. That downloads and installs everything. Once it's done, you run this setup wizard, Hermes Setup. This will walk us through picking your model provider. I'm going to use GitHub Copilot. I've already got a Pro Plus subscription, so it's no extra API cost. Hermes supports Anthropic, OpenAI, Google Gemini, GitHub Copilot, and a bunch of others. If you've already got a subscription with any of them, you can use it straight away. No new accounts, no extra billing. I'm just going to let it do the rest of the installation, and then we'll come right back. Okay, it's looking like it's nearly done. It's about 10 minutes to do that install. Okay, so we need to pick our provider next. So let's do the quick setup. Okay, so it gives us an entire list of all the different providers. I'm going to go with the GitHub Copilot, and I'm going to go with the GitHub token GHAuth token. So that's the one I actually want to pick. I'm going to come back out of this, log into my GitHub, and then it'll pick that up automatically. So let me just quit out of this one. Just need to install the GitHub command line first. Once we've done that, we can then authenticate. Okay, so if I now do GHAuth, login, choose SSH, yes, create a new SSH, and then we can paste the authentication token. So if I go to that address there, let's generate a new token, authenticate with my mobile, and let's call this one Leo. And I'm going to make this one no expire, which is not really recommended, and I'm going to give it access to pretty much everything. Okay, create token, copy that token, let's go back to our terminal, paste that token in, and we're now authenticated and logged in. So we'll now go back to Hermes setup model. I can then choose GitHub, and we've got the correct login already set up for it to pick up. So if I now go back down to GitHub Copilot, and we can say we want to do number 1, login with GitHub, because we're already logged in. We can just do that little bit there. Let's grab that code. Okay, we're all set. We've now got a provider set up. We now just need to choose which model we want to use. I want to be on the latest and greatest version of Claude, Opus 4.8. That's brand new as of this week, so that's the one I'm going to choose. And we're going to go for medium reasoning controls. And we can say, add another credential for a fallback. No, I think we're okay on that one. We just need one for now. You can have multiple models, multiple providers. Okay, they have these TTS providers. Let's go with that. And there we go. So let's now just type in Hermes, and away we go. We can now start a new session. Okay, you'll see the agent banner, your new model, and a prompt. Now, one of the things I noticed, because I'm running this on macOS, the theme isn't currently matching. So in Hermes, they call this a skin. So if we go for /skin, we can choose daylight. And that should now make it a lot more pleasing to look at on this particular white mode terminal. Okay, so we can just type something, make sure it's working. There we go. What can I help with today? Now here's something I wanted to show you while Hermes is running. There's a concern that some people have that running an AI agent on a single board is going to hammer it. It's going to peg the CPU, eat all the RAM, and make it usable for anything else. Let's have a look at this side by side. This is my live Hermes agent, Fred, and you can see there Fred is currently got 2.5 gig of memory used, and it's not doing anything CPU wise. So let's have Hermes, which is also running on Fred, do something interesting. So tell me which issues I have open currently to work on next. You can see there it barely uses any CPU, because really all that it's doing is just making API calls to Claude code and then getting responses back. There's not actually a lot going on the machine itself. You can see there the activity. It's very, very low level. So look at that, the CPU is barely ticking over. We're on 25% showing normal idle. RAM usage is quite low as well. Hermes itself is a Python process, but it's not loading a model locally. It's just making API calls over the network. The heavy lifting happens on the cloud provider's hardware, not here. This is why this is such a great solution. So that's the key insight. The Uno Q isn't running the AI, it's running the agent. The agent is of the orchestration layer. It reads files, runs commands, calls tools, manages skills. The actual inference is somebody else's problem, which means the hardware requirements are generally tiny. One more thing that's worth installing while you're here is tmux. If you're not familiar with this, tmux is a terminal multiplexer. It enables you to run multiple terminal sessions inside a single window, and crucially, it keeps those sessions alive even if your SSH connection drops. I've got that installed here. You can see that that's the green bar at the bottom. So I'm back over here on Frankie. Let's just quit out of the session. You can see there, if we wanted to resume this, we can simply just copy and paste that in as well. But we want to install tmux, so let's do that. We do sudo apt install and then tmux, and it's quite a quick install. There we go. So now to start a new session that we can launch Hermes in, we do tmux new, and then we can give our session a name. Let's call it Hermes. And this is now running a tmux session. It looks exactly the same as a regular terminal, but because this is running in this multiplexer, we can disconnect, we can run new sessions, and use the Control and B command. And then if we did, for example, W, we can see the different window sessions that we currently have open. So I've only got the one open at the moment. So if I do Control B and D to disconnect, I can then reconnect later on. So if I do tmux, I do Control B, W, I can then go back to that session that we set up initially. So if I now run Hermes in here, let's resume that session that we had before. And now because we're running this in tmux, we can disconnect from this, we can reconnect, it'll carry on doing whatever we want it to do. So one thing I have noticed on the 2 gig version of the Arduino Uno Q, it is a tiny bit slower, and it's just because it hasn't got as much RAM to play with. Okay, so we've now got this session running in tmux. We can now disconnect from this if I do Control B and then D for disconnect. We can then reconnect to it by doing attach-T and then Hermes. And there we are, we're back in our session just as we were before. So this is great if you want to run a session and have it long-lived. It's always on, and that's pretty much essential for this kind of working. So once Hermes has been running and you've had a few sessions with it, the learning will start to show. Here's what that looks like in practice. The memory system keeps a compact profile of who you are, your environment looks like. It's injected into every session automatically. So Hermes knows the project structure, your preferences, how you like things done. So I'm back on Fred. This is my other AI agent on another Arduino Uno Q. This one has been running for a number of days now, so it has got some learning built in. The skills directory is where all the procedures live. Let's quit out of this. Let's disconnect actually. Control B, D, disconnect. Let's go into... So I'm in the Hermes folder here. The skills directory, which we can see there, let's go into skills. This is where all the procedures live. When Hermes solves something non-trivial, a workflow it had to figure out, a tool quirk it discovered, it can save this as a skill. Next session, it will load up the skill and pick up where it left off. So let's have a look at some of these that it's created on here. So in my note-taking folder, it's got an Obsidian skill that it's created for itself. Let's have a look at that. So it's got my Vault layout there, my YouTube scripts in that particular folder, rough notes, motivation, ideas and topics. Kevin stores freeform notes here, not inside the Vault. And production folder, content. So I structure my notes when I'm building a YouTube video. I have a dashboard, a script, research, build notes, and so on. And I always have the same kind of structure for that. I've even created my own script format, which is a flavor of Markdown, and it knows about that as well. Let's have a look in software development, see what skills it's built in there. So it's got quite a few. It has a Sphinx project docs. That's what I asked it to create. So I like my documentation to be in the Sphinx document format. So it's built a skill specifically for that. Now you can list the skills from within Hermes itself. If you do /skills, you see a list of all our skills. So there's a lot of install ones that are built in, and there's also ones you can see on the right hand column there. It says local. These are the ones like the Sphinx document ones that it's developed itself. You can always pin the ones you want to keep, so the automatic curator doesn't archive them. The curator is a background process that maintains the skill library. It tracks which skills are being actively used, marks idle ones as stale, and archives them if they stop being relevant. You always have the archive to roll back to. It never deletes anything, but it keeps the active library clean. This means in practice, after a few weeks of use, Hermes has a personalized library of procedures that are specific to your setup, your projects, and your way of working. That's not something you get from a fresh agent session on a different machine every time. So to wrap up, why Hermes on an Arduino Uno Q? The Uno Q is cheap. It comes with built-in storage, it's always on, and it handles an agent workload comfortably. Tailscale gives you the remote access solution from anywhere for free, and Hermes compounds its knowledge over time. Every session makes it a little better at your specific setup in a way that a stateless agent simply can't. Compare that to running OpenClaw, which costs significantly more in API tokens, pulls skills from an external registry, doesn't accumulate learning across sessions, and for me the choice is clear. This is the setup I'm going to be running for the foreseeable future. In the next video I want to go deeper on memory and skill systems and how to tune it, how to write your own skills, how to set up a gateway so Hermes can reach you on Telegram or Discord. If that sounds interesting, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. All the links Hermes, Tailscale and Uno Q are in the description, and if you're already running something similar, drop it in the comments. I'm always interested to know what other people are working on. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.